I'd like to start by telling you about my friend Bob. I first met Bob when he was living in North Minneapolis, and I wanted to see what he did on a daily basis as someone living with muscular dystrophy. I was fortunate to spend time with him in the summer when he was able to get out of his house, get in his wheelchair, and take his dog for a walk around the neighborhood. He would hand out bottles of water and strike up conversations with strangers. He's an incredibly social and incredibly friendly man. This is the start of his painting. It's 8 feet by 16 feet. I wanted people to be consumed by his community. So I'm the shy, introvert, stay-at-home kind of person. The one big thing I learned about Bob is he doesn't want to be home. He's a people person, but he really has a hard time getting out of his house because of his disability. Not everybody has access to their neighbors. If you don't have a ramp or you don't shovel your sidewalk in the winter. Bob can't go to his friend's house if they don't have an accessible home. And Bob can't come to my home. One of the other things that Bob does is he writes poetry. He writes about a lot of different things, but in his poem, Beauty, he writes about the restrictions on his life and about how he's overcome obstacles like depression and isolation. I included his poem in the painting that we did together, and here's his painting. At the exhibition, there was a woman standing in front of Bob's work, and I walked over, and she had tears coming down her face. She said, "This is so beautiful." It's moments like those that I've been striving for with my art. I thought these moments had added value and would help me make a connection with people through art. Bob's painting was part of a project to learn more about how people who might be considered to be living in the shadows of their community, people who may not have access to services and transportation because of their disability. As someone who is very privileged and have easy access to my community, easy access to the things I want access to, I thought, how better to try to understand how other people experience their community. Because all this time, I've been painting from my perspective, and I wanted to see if I could paint from somebody else's perspective, even if just a little bit. I was also nearing the completion of a job transition from a graphic design career to being a special education teacher. So I met different people with different disabilities living in my community. I worked with people with autism, I worked with people with Down syndrome, and I worked with people with muscular dystrophy. In high school, I had a wonderful art teacher, Mr. Clerks. Thankfully, because I wasn't a very good student. One of the things that Mr. Clerks had us do is he had us go out into the hall about once a week, and we would have a critique. He'd teach us about how to do a critique, and he had a rule that went something like, say one thing that you like about the work, but also say something that you have a question about or something that you would change. So this is the type of thing I was doing in high school. And the other students gave me lots of praise about this type of work that I was doing. Lots of compliments about my artistic ability. But one day, we were having one of these critiques, and the students were going on and on about how much they liked my drawings. But Mr. Clerk stood back, and he said, "That's really nice, but what else can you do?" And that was it. I understood immediately. It was for me to explore. It was for me to find out really what else was it I can do with my art. After that critique, I was painting as fast as I could, these big, bold, elaborate paintings. Mr. Clerks also encouraged me to go into education. But I was a bad student. I didn't have good grades, and I just thought for sure I couldn't be a good teacher. But over the years, I kept asking myself, what else can I do? Now, almost 30 years later, I recently finished my master's degree in special education. And while working on my master's project, I chose to work on the idea of how mindfulness interventions worked with students with significant behavior issues. And I read all these studies about how mindfulness and what it did for students and their families. In my research, I found that often the parent also goes along with the mindfulness training. So the parent also practicing mindfulness as well as the student. For the parent, learning how to respond to the student in new ways help reduce the child's behaviors. So I've dabbled in mindfulness a little bit, but never really practiced it regularly, I thought. So with my process with my art of wondering what else I can do and painting all the time, and taking the time to really try to understand how somebody else is thinking and feeling, and then going through this master's project, I realized I have been practicing mindfulness all this time. The result has been these paintings where I meditate on an idea, I watch people, study how they move, and wondering about how they think and feel. I also take ideas and see if I can visualize complex ones and make them simple. This one is about confronting fear, an ongoing theme in my work. Different monsters have represented fear for me over the years. The other characters are confronting the fear. But I like to leave things vague so that the viewer can participate in it and add in their own values and their own feelings and identify with any one of the characters that they want. This one is about celebrating and embracing the comfort of the city or embracing the comfort of the unknown. This one is about living in a dream or living your dream. I've been noticing these people a lot more recently. They take their time, they listen, and they smile. I think these people are living in their dream. I don't want to be the center of the crowd, but I like to be there watching. I really try to pay attention to my community, what people are doing, how people interact and move. This is an older painting. I painted this after watching people at a grocery store line. Arms dangled from the side of a floppy body. This is how I imagined a body would look if it looked like it felt. This one is really about the hustle of the community, like at rush hour. I really love these settings to see how people navigate through their environment. The emotion, the energy, the feeling, and visually, I think they're just wonderful. These paintings are also about the calmness among the chaos, about how you can be lonelier in a crowd than in a small group, or you can be freer in a crowd than when you're alone. People often call me very patient. I even won an award at a middle school for being the most patient teacher. I thought I was being patient with others, and that's what people noticed when I won that award. But I realized I was just learning how to be patient with myself, not others. I was that parent learning how to respond differently to the child. I read that Nelson Mandela talked about being liberated from fear. And what does that look like for me, for others? I've learned to connect to people, I need to present personal situations, however complex or simple, and allow the viewer to be part of it. My characters are simple so that anyone can identify with them. They are anyone and everyone. Somebody can look at my work and say, I feel like that, or hey, that's me. And they add their values and feelings to my work to complete it. What else can you do? Thank you.